Heavily inspired by Venetian history, Masquerada Songs and Shadows is an adventure game that takes you through a fantasy world steeped in history and culture. The game is billed as an RPG, but offers players very little responsibility or choice when it comes to the narrative and the characters of Masquerada. The story that unfolds through Masquerada's 15-hour campaign can be cumbersome to digest at first, which is only due to you being thrown into a fantasy world that genuinely feels alive. The city of Umbra has history hidden in every one of its walls, and just about every character has a story to tell. It's through these stories and the history of Umbra where Masquerada really comes to life. The last game I played that embraced its narrative history as much as Masquerada was the excellent The Witcher 3. As previously mentioned, it can take a few hours to really understand what is going on with the main storyline, but once you have a basic understanding of the different characters you'll regularly interact with and the various historical terms, then you're in for a treat. You play through the story as Ispitore Cicero, who has been appointed by the registry to find a missing scientist. But what starts as a missing person case soon turns into a fantasy tale around the origins of the mysterious Venetian masks worn by the inhabitants of Umbra, known as Masquerines. These magical masks provide the bearers with unique magical abilities, which can be controlled for use in combat, but more on that in a minute. The main overarching story is shared with the player through brilliantly voiced dialogue and charming graphic novel-like animations.
When the trumpets of peace sound, when the masked runners are dead in the gutter. No, it ends when it ceases to echo through every street or shadow every face.
Although these interactions will provide you with enough insight to understand the main story, you'll need to read through the well-written journal entries to gain a full understanding of what is really happening in Masquerada. A quick warning, there is a lot of these entries, and with some of them pretty long. If reading chunky elements of text in video games isn't your idea of fun, then you're probably going to switch off pretty quickly when it comes to Masquerada. But if, like me, you love chewing through these meaty texts of lore, then you will love learning more about the different cultures, locations, and history that Masquerada has to offer. As mentioned at the beginning, Masquerada is sold as an RPG, which seems very odd, as the game offers very little in terms of role-playing mechanics. Although the story here is very good, it's also very linear. The game will always usher you from point to point, offering almost no exploration in between. To add to the lack of RPG mechanics, Masquerada only gives you 2 opportunities to make a decision as a player, both of which are linked to the combat. There is not a single point throughout the entire story where you are asked to make a decision, which I can't help but feel a little bit disappointed with. Developers Witching Hour Studios have clearly put a lot of love into creating the stunning world of Masquerada, but only to take us on a train ride through the striking world and its story. The combat in Masquerada does provide you with a little bit more responsibility on your decision making. You have the control of how to distribute skill points in your party skill trees, allowing them to perform different abilities in battle, and you also have the option of changing their masquerine, which in turn provides them with a new ultimate ability. All combat plays out in a real-time manner, with you having the option to pause the gameplay and set up your companion's actions before diving back into the action. One element that really stands out with the combat is just how good it looks. Don't get me wrong, as a whole, Masquerada is a visually striking game with adorable shell-shade art style, but this is shown off to its full glory with the slick animations of the different combat abilities. With a very linear approach to its gameplay, and only a few select choices that you are responsible for, I find it very hard to refer to Masquerada Songs and Shadows as an RPG. However, what the game lacks in player choices, it makes up with its narrative. If you're willing to sink your teeth into the text-heavy backstory of Masquerada, then you'll be richly rewarded with a truly memorable fantasy adventure game. Masquerada Songs and Shadows was only one of the indie games to release this week. To check out what other games you can get your hands on, then why not watch our indie game console release video for this week.